Neets Module 18. Alright, radar. The electronic system may reflect the electromagnetic energy detect the presence of the position of an object invisible to the eye. Target position is defined in reference of the truth over the horizontal plane with the vertical plane with the true bearing angle with the truth over the line of the target measure with the clockwise direction horizontal plane. Elevation angle between the horizontal plane and line of sight and the edge of the vertical plane with the range of distance of the radar side of the target measured along with the line of sight of the concept of the illustrated figure. True north, true bearing, the range, vertical plane, elevation angle, horizontal plane, range, any target with a calculated measure of the time required, pulse to travel, the target return of the radar receiver, the elapsed time of 3.6 microseconds, target range elapsed equal to 12.3 microseconds per nautical mile, minimum range radar calculated with the following, minimum range time equal to the pulse width time, both of the recovery time times 164 yards over the microseconds. Maximum range of the pulse radar system depends on the carrier frequency, peak power of the pulse, repetition frequency, receiver sensitivity, pulse repetition time of the time between beginning with the one pulse with the beginning with the next pulse, reciprocal over the pulse repetition frequency, pulse repetition time is equal to 1 over the pulse repetition frequency, pulse with the listening of the time, pulse repetition time. Ambiguous return to the echo with the target with the exceed the pulse repetition time of the radar system with the result of the pulse range reading of the maximum ambiguous range of the radar system can be determined by formula the range is equal to 162,000 miles per over a second and over divided by 2 times peak pulse repetition time, peak power. Radio system is total energy contained with the pulse of the peak power is obtained with the multiplying the maximum power pulse level of the pulse and pulse with the sum of the instruments of the design and the average power over the period of time. Pulse repetition time must be included with into the transmitter power measurement. The average over the average power is peak and power average equal to peak over the times the pulse width over the pulse repetition time, or peak average equal to peak pulse the average over the peak equal to the pulse width time pulse repetition frequency. Product of the pulse width, the pulse repetition frequency is called the duty cycle of the radar system. The ratio of the transmitter time on and time off. The formula peak power equal to the average power of the radar system is equal to peak equal to the power average over the duty cycle. The average antenna height, rotation speed of the affecting the radar range of the sun, since the height of the energy does not normal bend with the flow of the curvature of the earth. Most radar system cannot detect the targets above the radar horizon. The distance of the horizon of the radar system can be determined in the form of the radar horizon distance equal to 1.25 times the square root of the antenna height in feet. The shown in the antenna rotate with the hits per scan. The likelihood of the target will produce the usable echo is to increase the bearing on the target with the main reference of the true north or to your own ship. Bearing reference of the true north of the true bearing reference to the ship of the relative of the bearing as shown with the illustration. Bearing angle that is obtained with the moving the antenna to perform the maximum signal return. True north, true bearing 90 degrees, ship center line, ship bearing 45 degrees, target own ship. The radar system is to detect only range of the bearing we call the two-dimensional radars. Radar detect height with the wells range of the being the called three-dimensional target resolution radar system. The ability to distinguish between targets that are very close together. Radar range resolution ability to distinguish between two or more targets on the same bearing with the preliminary dependent with the pulse width of the radar system. The formula range resolution is equal to pulse width times 164 yards per microsecond. The bearing resolution is the ability of the radar with a separate with the target with the same range with a different range bearing with a different range. The degree of the bearing resolution dependent on beam with the width of the range and accuracy of the radar large dependent on the resolution. Atmospheric conditions affect the speed, direction, travel, electromagnetic energy wavefronts for the traveling through the air. Under normal condition, wavefront increase the uniformly speed with the altitude increase with the cover of the travel, the power path curve downward curve the extent of the radar horizon shown through the illustration. Intensity of the atmosphere present with the water vapor and temperature change with directly affect with the travel of electromagnetic waveforms. Ocean surface major components typical of the pulse radar system are shown in the illustration. The synchronizing supply with the timing the signal to coordinate with the with the entire system. This transmitter generated the electromagnetic energy short with the powerful pulse of the duplexer allowed with the same antenna to both transmit and receive. The receiver that detects the amplify with the return circle that indicator produce the visual indication of the range and the bearing of the echo. So the duplex system transmitter power supply synchronizer receiver indicator scanning is the automatic systematic movement of the radar beam while searching with a tracking target. Or a stationary lobe scanning is the simplest type of the scanning usually using the 2D radar radar, the monopulse scanning, even the fire control radars employed with a 4-signal quantity. These are accurate with the target moving track with the two basic methods scanning with a mechanical electronically radar system is divided into operational categories based on the energy transmission method, the continuous wave frequency modulation and pulse modulation. Continuous wave method transmit with a constant frequency target with the chain of the frequency called with the electromagnetic energy reflecting from the movement of the target. The change in frequency is called with the Doppler shift, the Doppler effect. Frequency modulation method is a single constantly change the frequency around the fixed reference to detect stationary objects. Alright, pulse modulation. You have the short pulse energy relatively long listening time with the accurate determine the target with the range of the simple method that does not depend on the signal the frequency of the target motion. The advantage over the continuous wave frequency modulation method is the most common type of the radar. Radar system is also classified by such function as search radar, continuous scan of volume with the scan provided with the initial detection with all of the target track radar provided with the continuous range and bearing and elevation data with the one or more specific targets. Most radar systems variation of these two types, and that was chapter 1 summary. Alright, chapter 2 radar subsystems.